Today I'm going to be doing a demonstration with Derwent Inktense pencils and blocks. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Today I am working with Derwent Inktense, both the pencils and blocks. If you've not worked with these before or you haven't seen it already, I do have a video with a full review, and it also at the beginning of the tutorial portion will show you exactly how I'm using a paintbrush with water to use the blocks themselves. For this piece I am working on Fabriano Artistico Extra White Hot Press 300-pound watercolor paper. If you are supporters over on Patreon, the 1-hour version of this tutorial is available for you guys now, so make sure to head over and check that out. Now let's get on to this demonstration. I started off by using masking fluid to cover my entire subject. I do have a video showing you how to use that. I will have a little card pop up, so if you've not seen that, you can check that out. I'm starting by just multiple layers for my background, and I'm letting all of these different shades of green lay on top of each other and kind of blend into each other. Once a layer is completely dry, the great thing about the Inktense is that you can add layers on top and it doesn't smudge or move or damage or do anything to the previous layer. So if you do a layer, let it dry, you can do lots on top. For these circles, I am using Inktense blocks with water and a brush to do the little circles. I let that dry, and then I can glaze the green colors on top of it so I get that nice blurred background. Moving on to the branch, I'm first putting a layer of brown. I'm going over all of that branch with just this one solid color. I'm then going back on top for the shadows. Again, I'm using the Inktense blocks. So far, everything has been done on this piece with the Inktense blocks, a paintbrush where I added water. And if you've not already checked it out, make sure to check out my first video doing the flamingo, where I show you exactly how I'm mixing water on the block to get this look. Getting all of these little details blocked in here. Now when I'm mixing my colors with the blocks, you don't want so much water on there that it starts to run. If it does start to run, just take your paper towel and dab it off. But you want it to where it's still thin, where it's blending smoothly, but not to where it's running down your paper. Adding some highlights with the white block. I blended that out with water, and now I'm going to use pencils to come back through and add some detail. Once I add the detail with the pencils, I take a clean brush just with water and wash over that. And I'm doing multiple layers. Again, as long as I let each layer dry in between, I can put a layer on top and it's not going to lift or smudge or move the previous layers. So this medium, that is the best thing I think about this, is that you are just so unlimited on how many layers that you can apply. Moving on to the leaves, I sketched in the first layer of green with the pencil, wetted it with a brush and water, and then now I'm going on top with the Inktense blocks. I've mixed a darker green and some whites for my shadows and highlights. Now when I get into the smallest areas, one thing you might be surprised about is that the blocks can get finer detail. If you're using a small brush with water like I'm doing here, you can get way smaller, finer detail than you can with the pencils, which is a little bit backwards because typically the pencils are going to, if you're working with colored pencil or graphite, those will give you finer detail than painting. But just the way that this works with creating this thin ink mixture with the blocks and using these fine paintbrushes, I can get such tiny, tiny detail. So I'm going through here and I'm blocking in just the sketches for where the fur is going to go. I've got to make sure all those little lines are going in the right direction. Once they dry, I can glaze another darker color right over it, but I can still see my fur marks underneath it. Adding some shadows on the white. And then I'm using the pencil to hype up the contrast and the depth in the fur itself so that it doesn't look so flat. Blocking in the fur on his chest, making sure I move that brush in the direction of the fur. That's the great thing about painting with a paintbrush. You can so easily get the look of fur very quickly. I've then used white, again with the Inktense blocks. I mixed some water with the paintbrush and I washed that, or made little hair marks all over his face. When that dried, I was able to wash a darker red color over it to help me build up the texture of the fur there. And you can do this so many different layers. I mean, layer on top of layer, you're really not limited here. So you just keep layering it until you get it exactly how you want. And each of those previous layers shows through just a bit, which helps me build up some depth in the fur there. I think because of the way that you can layer the white and how opaque that white gets, and then layering a glaze on top of it, it makes this medium really great for painting fur once you get the hang of using the paintbrush with the water. Using a liner brush here. This one is a synthetic hog-hair bristled liner brush. I believe that's a number 2 or a number 3, just for the fine, fine detail. I will also use that brush later on, again with white, the same way for drawing in or painting in the whiskers. But that goes last. I just keep adding and building shadows until I get everything where I want it. Onto the paws, I've outlined everything with black with the Inktense blocks and a paintbrush first. Once that dried, I took the same black, but I mixed more water in with it so that it was more translucent and washed that over the black for the details in the paws. Then I came back on top with some white for some highlights. One tip for you, when you want things to be really black, very, very dark, I found that going on top of the black that I painted on with the Inktense blocks, with the Inktense pencil, that pencil gets way darker. Even more so than if I had taken the block and worked the block directly onto the paper and then wet it with the water. Doing that with the pencil, because of the way that it's sharpened, it gets into all the little crevices of the paper, and the saturation there is just so nice for getting things really dark. So if you do have the Inktense blocks and none of the pencils, I would pick up at least that black pencil. It's so, so nice. The tail, I worked the same way as I did the rest of the red panda, where I blocked in approximately where all my colors would go, and then I kept coming on top with that white to give me that opaque look for highlights, then glazed over it. You can see I've got my brush strokes showing so that I still keep that look of soft fur. And I just layered on top of layered until I got it where I wanted it. One nice thing with this medium, while you're waiting for a layer to dry, you can actually use a hairdryer to dry it. With colored pencil, I do not recommend that if you're using paint thinner to blend because that is flammable. But here we're just using water. This is totally safe, and you can speed up the process by drying with the hairdryer in between layers. Just don't put the hairdryer too close to your project. I continued building up my values on the tail until I got it where I wanted. Once that was finished, I took my liner brush, the same one that I used earlier for the detail on the fur, and I mixed a white mixture with water, that brush, and the white Inktense block to come up with a very thick, opaque mixture for the whiskers. I then painted those in, making sure not to let them be too straight. You'll notice that the whiskers are slightly curved, which gives it a more natural look. Now, one thing that you're not going to see on this video, the next day I decided that I wanted a little bit of an extra bit of color in here. And so I took the white, I added highlights, so I had a secondary light source on all of the shadows, all of the dark areas, added highlights of blue, and then, I added the highlights of the white. Then when it dried, I glazed that blue-green right over it, and that gave it that bit of a blue glow on the opposite side, which made my orange pop even more just because those colors look so good together. And that is it. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Thanks for watching. Again, if you are supporters over on Patreon, the 1-hour version of this tutorial is available for you now, so make sure to head over and check that out. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speak paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, social media tips for artists each Thursday, and artist vlogs every weekend. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Google+. All of those social media sites are linked below in the video description where you can keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is I'm currently working on. I'll see you guys tomorrow. So if you have not already done so, you should stop what you're doing right now and go do a YouTube search for red panda. Oh my gosh, they may be one of the cutest animals in the history of the world, ever. The video of the one playing with a pumpkin in the snow, oh my god, so cute. Just a warning, you may die. Sorry, Echo, but I think the red panda might actually be cuter than you. I gotta be honest. You're pretty cute, but, you know, that red panda.